I watched Caroline Levitt's press conference today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. The craziest thing she says is she calls human trafficking a non-violent crime. I wonder why she would say that. She spoke for about 23 minutes. She didn't mention Biden, but she did mention Obama once. She says clean, beautiful coal is the cheapest and most reliable energy source out there. Here are some energy sources that are cheaper than coal. Wind, solar, hydropower, and geothermal, all cheaper than coal. Despite the fact that I could look all of that up in 15 seconds, she says that clean, beautiful coal is what keeps the lights on, and it also drives down the cost of electricity across the country. She says that by Trump cutting regulations, we're going to save $1.3 trillion on government spending, which, by the way, is $3,700 per person. And you personally are not going to be affected by cutting of regulations because you personally are not doing anything that requires government regulations. Since she doesn't seem inclined, let me put that in layman's terms. The billionaire class who is building all of these things that are actively destroying our environment will save $1.3 trillion by them cutting regulations. She says Maduro is a narco-terrorist, obviously, and then says that this is the biggest tax refund season, and you're all going to see that as soon as you file your taxes. She says that every Democrat voted against tax cuts for the middle and lower income classes. Now, obviously, that's not true because the big beautiful bill only benefits the billionaire class and the top 1%, but she's going to continue to say that Democrats voted against it, and also you're going to save all this money on taxes. She will then just give 3 anecdotal stories about people who are supposedly making more money because of the Trump tax cuts. She's talking about someone who's like, I'm going to save money on no tax on tips. And then another person who's like, I'm going to save money on no tax on overtime. And then she tells some anecdotal story about a person who paid $3,700 last year, and this year they got back $2,500. But she doesn't explain their financial situation that would lead to those changes or any policy that happened that would lead to those changes. She says parents are now eligible for the Trump accounts, which the U.S. Treasury, that's your money, is going to put $1,000 into each one of those accounts. And then also you personally can put in $5,000 per year because people just have $5,000 laying around. And also everyone's employer, if they so choose, can also put in $2,500 per year. And then says that that amount by the time that they are 20 years old is going to be $1.1 million for every child in this country. Just to do some math on that, she's saying that if over 20 years you put $100,000 into your child's account and also you somehow convince your employer to put in $50,000 over the 20 years and also the Treasury gives you $1,000, then that $151,000 will equal $1.1 million just for some reason. She just says that. Time for questions. She says that anyone who's in this country undocumented is subject to deportation regardless of any crimes they've committed or their status within the immigration system. She says that 60% of people who are arrested by ICE are criminals and have a criminal record, and also that most of them are nonviolent criminals. I'm just going to be clear here. That is also saying that 40% of the people who ICE arrests do not have a criminal record. Sorry, you see this little hair right here? I thought I had it. She gets asked about the fact that Trump called the police chief in Palm Beach or whatever over the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was doing illegal shit. And then she says that Trump has been consistent that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago because he was a creep and that phone call may or may not have happened. Bro, they are just saying anything in the Epstein files that relates to Trump is just totally inaccurate. You can't say for sure whether or not any of that happened. Everything that has Bill Clinton on it obviously happened, but anything that was Trump is probably a lie. Oh yeah, and then she just says we need to move on from the Epstein files. I wonder why. But then she doesn't move on from the Epstein files, and so she says that the 3 million documents that were released show our transparency. They're all redacted, and also it's not all the files by your own administration's admission. She says the SAVE Act is just reasonable and total common sense, even though it is a poll tax and a direct violation of the 24th Amendment of our Constitution, which it seems no one in this administration has taken the time to just take a moment and read the Constitution. If you want more information on that, you can just look at Joe Hubbard's videos. I'll tag him after Caroline Levitt. By the way, if you appreciate that I tag Caroline Levitt in every single video, please also tag Caroline Levitt in this video. Then a reporter will ask her about the fact that Trump says that he wants to rename Dulles Airport, if you're from the DMV, you know about Dulles, and also Penn Station to put Trump's name on it. And she goes, well, I mean, he floated the idea. A reporter says, hey, J.D. Vance deleted a tweet he put out this morning about the Armenian genocide, and also last week, Trump deleted the racist post he put out about the Obamas. Is there a social media problem in the administration? She goes, nah, we put out messages about that, so you can just look at those messages we said about those things. Then she'll say that Trump constantly talks about this, is that he wants to lower the price of things like groceries, you know, that new term groceries, and says that he's constantly focused on lowering prices. Then a reporter brings up the True Social post I talked about yesterday where he says that he's going to block the bridge that Canada completely paid for from being built, and then says that we should, because Canada paid for the entire thing, also have half of the control of that bridge and the things that come across it, and then also says that we didn't put enough American-made products into building that bridge, so for that reason, he can block the bridge that Canada completely paid for. I honestly don't know what the fuck she's talking about. A reporter brings up the border wall and she says that Trump is always about under budget and ahead of schedule. Like the ballroom that was supposedly going to be $200 million, but is now $400 million, and also the additional $200 million that he's going to spend on the Kennedy Center, even though he was just refurbished during his last administration. All of these things, just saving you money by spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Then a reporter brings up a meeting of governors where supposedly only Republicans were invited, and she says that he can invite anyone who he wants to the White House, and also no one reported on the fact that a governor who was invited last year didn't show up to the meeting, so apparently we're all good there. Then she says she's not sure whether or not Trump is going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell because he's focused on more important things that the American people care about. We want the fucking files! Then a reporter brings up how Howard Lutnick continued to have contact with Jeffrey Epstein after he was arrested for soliciting sex from a minor. And she's like, we totally support Howard Lutnick. We're totally behind him 100% of the way. Then she's clearly getting frustrated about the fact that everyone is calling her out for all of her constant, blatant lies. And she's like, there have also been a ton of accomplishments that no one is talking about. And then she goes on to list just a bunch of shit that no one really cares about. And then she'll say that rents are at a 4-year low. Prove it. Then she'll say that mortgage affordability is at an all-time low. Completely fucking untrue, considering you could buy a house like 50 years ago for like $16,000. And then she says for 9 months, no one came in illegally. Since I've already done way more cursing than I normally would do here, please do tag Caroline Levitt and just tag at Caroline Levitt, you're a cunt. That would be fantastic. I would really appreciate that. I have someone to thank. This person says, thank you for sparing us the long-winded insanity and keeping us informed so we have more time with the animals. Keep up the great work. Longtime 10%er here from Nicole G. Nicole G sent another book on helping me learn Spanish. If you don't know why I want to learn Spanish, you can look at my previous videos. Thank you so much for that. 10%ers, thank you for being here. Again, please tag her in this. I do want her to eventually acknowledge the fact that I'm tagging her in everything, and also all of these videos get 100 or hundreds of thousands of views for all of them. It would be nice if they would at least acknowledge that people are calling out their incessant nonsense. That would be fantastic.